for Amtrak. And Amtrak welcomed Tom back to its board of directors very recently. He was nominated by President Obama and confirmed by the US Senate to serve a 5-year term. Mr. Carper previously served as a board member from March 2008 to March 2013, and he was elected chairman in January of 2009 and served in that capacity until his term expired. Mr. Carper was a small business owner from Macomb, Illinois, and served as a mayor of Macomb from 1991 to 2003. He was appointed by the Amtrak Board of Directors to serve on the Amtrak Mayor's Advisory Council and served as its chair from 2000 to 2001. In 2003, he was named Regional Director of the West Central Region for Opportunity Returns by the Illinois Governor. Now, he retired from this position in 2010. So, welcome, Tom. Thanks for being at the Michigan Rail Conference.
Got it? Good. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate the kind remarks, and I appreciate the opportunity to come back to Michigan. Been here, Ray. Let's see. We were in Kalamazoo for the rollout of the 110. I was in Pontiac for the groundbreaking. Back in Pontiac for the ribbon cutting. And I'm, as you all are, I'm excited about what's going on in Michigan. First, before I get into my remarks, and you can see the system map up there, I want to make it's interesting to follow the freight rail in economic development and to hear some of the things that they're talking about in the freight industry and the short line industry. I live in a little town of 20,000 in downstate Illinois, down in soybean corn country. Well, I won't go over to the map, but it's Peoria, Illinois, and go west about 60 miles over there. We're about 30 miles from Keokuk, Iowa, Burlington, Iowa, over in that area. So good farm ground. And to say that the world is changing when it comes to farming and the freight industry is changing. And to hear you talk about freshwater and how the opportunities in Michigan and the Great Lakes area are just tremendous opportunities because of fresh water. Well, not to get too deep in what I'm going to talk about, but if you look at the what we call the Chicago hub and the structure there and the potential there because of fresh water, and my gosh, if you look at the system that is already there, I mean, the potential is great. Jim Burnham was talking about transload, train to truck, and truck to train, and in passenger rail, we'll talk about this a little bit. I kind of put passengers to transit and taxi cabs and buses into that same category. I mean, we get people to the station, but the important part of the journey is from the station to wherever you're going, and we can't do that. We can only get you so far. And another thing, being a mayor. And being in a position, and you in local government, and know that we always joke about when things get kicked down from Washington, we say to Springfield, Washington to Lansing, and then it gets kicked down to Lansing to state government down. When it gets down to us, local, there's just no place else to kick it. You got to deal with issues, and what you deal with issues in the transit end, and that's part of the system is the transit. Taxi cabs, enterprise car rentals, and things like that, getting people to the last mile. So I thought it was very telling and interesting to follow follow that session. I want to bring you greetings from the Amtrak, from Amtrak in general. Joe Boardman, our president and CEO, our chairman, Tony Kosha from New Jersey, the board of directors, and the 20,000 men and women at Amtrak who really, frankly, who really make it happen. We got 3 of them here today. Ray Lang, who I came up with on the Blue Water last night, by the way, 354 passengers on a Monday coming out of Chicago. I think 89 or 86 or 90 got off here. 100 Girl Scouts are getting off or got off in Flint. It's just an example of what's going on in the success of the service up here. Dave Stapleton, Dave is here. Mike Trezano. There are people who really make everything work for Amtrak. They've kept this thing going for many years, and now we're really on a good roll. I want to give you the update. That's I read what I'm supposed to talk about, the present status of Amtrak and where we are today. And I've got a number of slides that we'll get through. Some of them you've already seen. Some of this won't be new to you, but we're going to go over it anyway. But what I want to go back a little bit, because I think it's important for at least I like it when I'm sitting, to get a little perspective on where Amtrak has been, and then we can talk a little bit and get it into perspective of where we are now. So I'm going to make a quote out of a book that I really like. It's called Amtrak, Past, Present, and Future by Frank Wilner. Anybody read this book? I would suggest you Google it and take a look at it. You've read it. And it talks in there, in the foreword, a gentleman by the name of Doug Bowen, in the foreword, made some comments about the struggles that Amtrak has gone through since it was created in 1971. And he'd write a paragraph or two, and then he would say, and yet it still runs. And then they'd go through another trial and tribulation of all the things that have happened and underfunding and everything. And he says, and yet it still runs. And you go down through the whole thing. And the point he was making is the trials and tribulations that this company has gone through in all of those years. And yet it's still running, supported by the employees, the 3 employees that I talked about here, and the employees that Amtrak has had for all of those years. And frankly, it still runs because a lot of you've got great staff here in Michigan. You've got people from passenger rail advocates. You got NARP. You got individuals. You got mayors from around the country. You got universities that are interested. All of that collectively has kept this thing going for all of these years. And in my mind, all these years waiting for the time for somebody to pull it together for the right time, to waiting for the opportunity to have some stability. Well, we like to think at Amtrak that the last 5 or 6 years have really been a great opportunity. I know it's been a great opportunity. And that time of stability started. Now you're seeing the results of it. You were ready to take advantage of the situation that came up here in Michigan, and now you're seeing the result of it. Take you back to 1947. One more quote, and then we'll get on with business here. By the way, that's 1 year after I was born, so do the math there. This is a part of a paragraph, and it starts with, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. This was written by Shakespeare. So it was that the automobile and the jet aircraft supplanted trains as the travel mode of choice for Americans, and passenger rail travel declined, with annual passenger miles tumbling from 40 million passenger miles in 1947, 40 million, to 8 million in 1969. And here's a little blurb that was written in 1959. Allegheny Airlines, currently receiving over $3 million a year in federal operating subsidy, recently initiated a non-reservation coach fare of $11.82 between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The principal railroad serving those cities, the Pennsylvania Railroad, which receives no subsidy, charges $15.07 for the same trip by rail coach. The Pennsylvania Railroad reported a loss of $38 million on its passenger business in 1969. So that was the start. That's what we had to work with when Amtrak was created. I'm not going to go through all the issues that have come up, but the company was thrown together, and it has survived for going on 42 years now, and yet it still runs, and now it's thriving. My hometown is 20,000 people, college town. State University, 250 miles southwest of Chicago, Galesburg, Macomb, Quincy, Illinois. In 1995, we were losing our service. and some of you were around, we thought we were going to lose our service. We thought we were faced with the option of trying to figure out how many days a week we wanted to have. Our one day, we had one round trip a day from Quincy to Chicago. It just didn't work. And this was happening nationally, and I could name you names of people. Mayor John Robert Smith from Meridian, Mississippi, who was on the board of directors of Amtrak, and now it works tirelessly for the effort. Starting at that time, people got involved, mayors got involved, local elected officials got involved, historic preservation people got involved, smart growth, planning commissions, agriculture people got involved. The rural United States woke up and said we could lose this service, and it was the beginning. It was the beginning of the transformation of Amtrak. Now, I'm going to run through some slides. I'm going to do it kind of quick because I want to make sure that we got time for questions and answers. Most of these slides are going to fit into two categories. What I call, these are my words, not Joe Boardman's or Ray Lang's. It's kind of the inside game of Amtrak and the outside game. And you're going to see slides about the outside game. And the outside game was 354 people riding the train up here from Chicago last night. The outside game is record ridership for the last 9 or 10 years, record revenue for the last 9 or 10 years. All of the things that you hear about. The outside game is also the negative things that you hear about. But the inside game, the game that you were just talking about in this last panel, is the excruciating detail of trying to make something run better. Amtrak is a business. You know, we do get a subsidy, and we'll talk about that. But since I came on the board in 2008, the board of directors of Amtrak, in an incredibly nonpartisan basis, because when I came on, there was 2 appointed board members, Donna McClain, a Republican, and Hunter Biden, the president's son, and Senator Biden's son, as a Democrat, and that was it. Nancy Naples and I came on, and after the election, Hunter Biden left. We switched chairs, as you just said, in 2009, and since that time, we brought Joe Boardman on, and we have done everything that we could, the board and management, to shift the operation to run it more like a business in the confines of everything that we have going on. And the end result of that are things that I'll list in another slide. But those are things you never hear about. And I don't mean you don't hear about it out here. You don't hear about it inside the Beltway either. Nobody writes about it. But it's the right thing to do. I get business people out here, and I ran a business for 20 years, and you run a business. When I got back from the service, I was stationed at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, and I started going to a little bar and restaurant outside of Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, and it was owned by 3 Greeks, George, Pete, and Nick Samaras. They asked me if I wanted to give it a shot at tending bar and work for them. I said, yeah, I'll give it a go. So he said, here's what you do. You got to come in for 3 or 4 weeks. You got to work with all the brothers, and then we'll see if you pass muster. Sounds good to me. He says, I got 2 things to tell you. First of all, we're a profit-making organization. We want you to run this, work this like it was your own business. Well, you know, I got to tell you, that's my feeling when I sit with the board of directors and the management and the people of Amtrak. We're trying to run as efficient a business as we can, and we're trying to run it like it was our own business. So enough of that. Let's give this a go. Just talked about it. Ridership and revenue is up. You've seen these numbers, the growth on the Northeast Corridor and the short distance trains. The Illinois doubled its service, doubled its frequencies. When, Ray, 6 years ago? As a matter of fact, your federal rail administrators, Joe Szabo and I, secured petitions at the Illinois Municipal League Conference for 2 or 3 years to encourage the Illinois legislature, Kevin Brubaker's back there, to encourage the Illinois legislature to pass the legislation. People met weekly, bi-weekly at the ELPC office. I mean, it was not a fast process, folks. Nothing in the railroad is a fast process. But when it changed is when Joe Szabo and I, at that time the The mayor of, oh, I know, he wasn't the mayor. Mayor of Riverdale went to visit a friend of ours who was the mayor of Pontiac, Illinois. Now, let me go back here. I can't get you Pontiac, but you go straight out of Chicago to Bloomington, Normal, and St. Louis. Can you see that? Pontiac's a town out there about 100 miles out. So draw that circle around Pontiac. And when we went in to talk to Mayor Mike, we used a different tack. It wasn't a transportation thing we wanted to talk to him about. We wanted to talk to him about economic development. And the fact that you can't drive out of Chicago to Pontiac, or you can't drive out of Chicago to Mendota, and you can't drive out to New Buffalo with any regularity. You never know what the traffic's going to be. And we didn't have all the answers, but I can tell you one thing. When we shifted the conversation from transportation to jobs, he started getting interested. And he was interested before, but it was just a transportation thing. It was kind of a pain, and he had a long-distance trains coming through, and he'd get people that would be waiting for it, and it would be late, and he just got tired of dealing with it. When it became an economic development issue, then it shifted its focus. So we believe at Amtrak that good passenger rail service is one important economic development tool for communities and cities. So you can see the numbers there, ridership and revenue, best year ever on the Blue Water. 9 out of the last 10 years, we've had record ticket revenues of $2 billion. And we're on track this year, pardon the pun, we're on track this year to set more records. So good news, outside game. Just a comparison of where Amtrak is, if you total this up with the airline industry, you've all heard the statistics about the percentage of Northeast Corridor traffic we have between New York and Washington, D.C., and New York and Boston, and you know, all of it that goes into that. And there is a place for passenger rail, and I do have to say that one of the things that was said, I think it was by Jim Bynum, is that in that comprehensive transportation plan that you talked about, Jim, there's a place for passenger rail in there. There's a place for all modes of transportation, and we feel now we're really solid in a seat at the table. And it's nice to have an administration who believes that and has put some resources behind it, and to have a management team that is engaged in that also. So that's where Amtrak is as compared to in the airline industry. This is the inside game that you don't hear much about. This may be one of the things that I know former board member Donna McLean is most happy about, because when I came on the board, the debt service on that debt was extraordinary, and we could go through all the reasons that Amtrak had accumulated that debt, the leveraging of Penn Station and leveraging equipment back when we thought the system was unraveling because of lack of funding, and not throwing rocks at anybody. I wasn't there. They kept the system going. They kept the system going. So this is huge. This is huge. And it's important for a couple reasons. One, because it's the right thing to do and it's good business. But here's the other reason that it's important. Because we were able to do this, I'm going to click these off. We've been able to focus resources on e-ticketing and Wi-Fi on certain trains, and it's coming to the Midwest. We're getting our finances under control. We've developed a strategic plan. We've had the opportunity to focus on and develop a strategic plan. We've got a fleet plan. And when some people criticize the fleet plan, and Joe Borden, I love this, and he says, yeah, we got one that's probably wrong. But isn't it great that we finally have a fleet plan so we can start looking out 5, 10 years and get some idea of what we need to order for equipment? We didn't have any idea what we want because we weren't in a position to order equipment. And we did order equipment because we had resources. For some, and part of it is because we were able to reduce this corporate debt, and ridership and revenue is up, and we're doing a better job internally. We have ordered single-level long-distance cars being built by CAF Company in New York, and electric locomotives that are being built by Siemens out in Sacramento, California. But all of those things, all those outside things that we get all the ink about, people in the back room that were running the business and scrunching the numbers and saying, we can buy those leases back at a discount, I mean, they're not. All of those things happen because you're starting to take care of business. And listen to me talk, because I'm not a finance guy, I mean, we could get our finance people up here, and it could really tell you the details of that. And maybe the biggest thing that's happened that's allowed this is the continuity of top leadership in the company. Those of you who have watched Amtrak over the years have seen just a revolving door. For whatever reason, CEOs come and go. There's some politics, there's all kinds of reasons. Joe's been the president and CEO since November of 2009, and I wasn't on the board when this happened, but I'm glad they did it. They have secured him for at least another couple years, so you have some time to implement the plans, to develop a strategic plan and to fine-tune the strategic plan and to develop a fleet plan and to implement things, because nothing happens quickly. In an organization of that size, of that complexity, that's strung over 21,000 miles all over the country, nothing happens fast. You're going to tell me when I'm running late, right? Okay, all right. Pardon me? Okay. On-time performance. Somebody asked a question about that, I think, in the One Rail presentation, I think, or on-time performance. I have a couple thoughts on that. It's getting better. You can see that it's improved dramatically since 2006. Here's what I think's going on. We have better freight relations. We have a relationship, a personal relationship between top Amtrak management and the freight railroads. That's important. That's important. People are still important. I mean, we're on our screens, or we're on Facebook, we're all that. But talking to somebody face to face, sitting down having a cup of water or a beer or whatever it is, and to pick somebody up on the phone, give them a heads up about something, those things matter. So Joe Boardman and under his leadership, we're doing a better job of that. We'll also have fewer self-inflicted delays in my mind. Those are ones you can't blame it on the freight railroads, because sometimes we can do it ourselves, but we're not doing that very much anymore. Our people have done the men and women of Amtrak have done a great job with that. And then we think there's been system improvements in the freight system. If the freight railroad, in my mind, and I've heard some freight CEOs say, if Amtrak's running well on my railroad, then I know we're doing a good job. So I think there's better cooperation. I think improvement to the freight system. It improves everybody. We've got a lot of smart people in the railroad business in this country, and certainly there can be capacity for a good amount of passenger rail running consistent over freight railroads, and I think you can see that happen. So federal subsidies are down. That's pretty self-explanatory. That's kind of the outside game's the outcome. The interesting stuff is the inside game of what causes that to happen. But it's happening. That's the important thing. We don't go out and have news releases about some of the things that we're doing internally, because the only thing that's really important is the end result. So that's where we are on that issue. I know Ray loves this slide, and I kind of like it too. This is the cut. Appropriated federal operating support is 12%. For people in this business, that's pretty darn good. Matter of fact, it's very good. Our folks have done a great job, and we're getting better at it, and we're trying harder at it. But this is a significant number. Outside game is what you read in the paper, the inside game of all the things that it takes to make that happen. And it doesn't happen quickly. And I'm not here to tell you that it wasn't starting to happen before Joe Boardman came on. I mean, and and present board members came on also. Amtrak has been moving in that direction for a while, for a long time. So this is just a continuation of that, of the efficiency of Amtrak versus other transit agencies or other passenger agencies. We're very proud of that. Very proud of that. We were talking earlier about, you go back to when the freight railroads got out. Somebody mentioned to me once, said, you know, I'm for passenger rail, but as long as it can pay for itself. And I said, well, you know, I think if there was money in passenger rail, that the freight railroads would still be in it. You know, I mean, they didn't get out of it because they were making too much money. So it's a tough slug, but the world is changing, and demographics are changing, and things are working. And fortunately, you know, I think we're ready to meet the challenge. This is an interesting one for me, coming from a small town. 5 minutes, okay. Coming from a small town, I'll quickly get through this. We have no bus service. We're not on the interstate highway system. Obviously, we don't have air service. Amtrak service, one round trip a day for 35 years, was our connection to Chicago that supplied 40% of the students that came to Western Illinois University. Now we have 2 round trips a day. So with no regularly scheduled bus service, this is not a hobby for us. This is it. This is important. And people in rural Illinois and in Michigan and in other places, this is not a luxury. So one small anecdote to that. Since we doubled the service in Illinois, the number of cars on campus at Western Illinois University, a university of 10,000, has dropped between 35 and 40%. The number of automobiles, 250 miles from Chicago, 35 to 40% in 6 years. I think that's pretty staggering. Okay, here's the system. This is it. You read all the time about what's going to happen to the system. Sell off the Northeast Corridor, do something with the long-distance trains. There you go. That's the system without the long-distance trains. And in my mind, if the long-distance trains are gone and that's the system you have, I don't know how we sustain the Chicago hub. I don't know how California sustains that wonderful system they have and the state-supported service that is spurs off the Northeast Corridor. There's your system. There's it without the long-distance train. This is a 3-legged stool, and we need to keep it together because we're all in this game. We're all in this game. And one of the reasons here, this is the flow chart, Chicago Union Station coming up to California Zephyr. Coming in, what it was, 136,000 passengers. The gray shows their destination in Chicago. This is where they're going. And we do this you can do this for every train that comes in and out. And some are transferring, some are going to Chicago, some are transferring to long-distance trains, others are going to state-supported trains, they're going to Michigan, they're going other places. That's the system. It churns every day, and all the east-west trains in the United States come through Chicago. In my mind, keeping the long-distance system is important to your, I believe it is for your service in Michigan, and I certainly believe it is for Illinois and all the other state-supported services. Federal spending by mode, you've seen that, but it is what it is. You can't see this too much, and we're not asking for a lot more money. We just want to be treated fairly. We've heard that. We heard that from on the freight side, and so I think that's pretty self-explanatory. We are a business. We have payroll. We've got people. They spend money. They pay taxes. They pay sales taxes. They pay property taxes. They buy houses. We earn a lot of money. 80% of the money that to support the operations comes from ticket revenue. So you can't discount all of that when you look at Amtrak. You just can't do it. You can't look at how much money is going in. You got to look at all in the totality, in my opinion. We believe it's a sound investment in the American economy. Just looking at that, not to say what it's doing for economic development, and I'll be talking later at another panel, and we have some great examples of that around the country, and frankly, here in Michigan. What we do for America, that's very self-explanatory too. Those are just numbers. You can all look at that. It just reinforces the slide before that. We are a business. We do have people. They live their lives. They are part of communities, and also their end product, moving people around the country, is a great tool for local and regional economic development. The takeaways today, and I'm going to be close. The demand for services is greater than it's ever been. I'd like to think it's all because we're doing a better job, and I think a lot of it is. But I also know that young people are not rushing out to get their driver's licenses. I'm going to be 67 years old in November, and lived in rural Illinois. If you didn't get your driver's license on the day that you turned 16, what the hell was wrong with you? That's not the way it is anymore. People are living around train stations in transit-oriented development. They're not so interested in cars. I'm going to go over about 30 seconds. I'm sorry. Okay. You're seeing down there the Chicago Union Station Master Plan. Talking to the member of the City Council in Washington, D.C., about the developers who were building these massive developments around. They're just flying up like crazy, and they're telling them, we're building too much parking. And the guy said, well, why don't you take it out of the place? He says, well, we can't, and we were too far along. People don't have as many cars as we thought they were going to have. It's happening. The world is changing. The world is changing in the freight industry. The world is changing in moving agricultural products. The world is changing when it comes to passenger rail and transit. Our capital needs to sustain this for the fleet and aging infrastructure are well known. Let me leave you with this. I've never seen a group of people work as hard as Joe Boardman and the Ray Langs and Dave and Mike. And Mike Boston's back there from the Signalman and our folks. I've never seen a group work any harder towards the goal, and what I just talked to you about today is the end result of that. Thank you for inviting me. Anytime. I love coming back here. I love what you're doing up here in Michigan. So take care. Bye. Questions. Sorry. I was just going to get out of here, and so you couldn't throw any daggers at me.
Yeah, I think let's take one or two quick questions if there's some from the audience, and then we're going to do the breakout to a couple of sites.
No, I didn't cover everything.
You guys are nice. You're making us to stay in the schedule better, but I'm sure you can ask.
Ray?
Oh,
yes.
Tom, I enjoyed your presentation. Could you elaborate a little bit? We just recently had that acquisition in Decatur, Michigan, that new grain elevator there, and the NS is going to operate grain trains in conjunction with that with the high-speed tractor. I wonder if you folks could just kind of expound that a little bit, kind of plan for what's going to happen there.
You're going to ask a board member to explain that? We've got railroad people here. I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but I mean, isn't that great?
As I explained, not only are we passenger friendly, but we try to be freight friendly. We try to help the freight partners both on the part of the corridor we already cared for, like the part you mentioned, and also we hope to on the new part as well. We worked with a developer. First of all, he had to get under our track, or I guess it was over the track with his, with his transfer facility, and we worked with him on track arrangements, property leases to be able to get the size trains in there that he needed to get. So, we look at the development of the freight. I mean, the more freight there is, the more commerce, the more people ride too. So we try to be freight friendly as well.
I would add to that. I mean, when you have a relationship with a railroad, and anytime you have a relationship, whether you're married or whether it's a relationship with a railroad, I mean, everything's not perfect all the time. That relationship goes on, and it goes on around the country. So, in my mind, I'll speak for Joe Boardman. I think I know him well enough. It's not in our best interest not to be a good partner. I mean, I think it's always in you can't do it to the degradation of yourself or where you lose tons of money, but it's in our best interest to be a partner with the people who are in the rail business, whether it's freight rail or people who are hauling. I like that attitude.
Well, Patsy, I've been trying to keep quiet, but I just want to add one thing here on this particular point, because that's one of the things that we're wrestling with the accelerated rail corridor, because it is a more sophisticated infrastructure than a lot of the other rail in the rest of the state. And when it comes particularly to freight economic development, there's an additional, with complexity comes additional costs. And we're trying to figure out how do we best manage and distribute those costs so that a freight business that wants to locate along the accelerated rail corridor, whether it's the 100 miles that Amtrak owns or the 135 miles that the state of Michigan just owned, that we share those costs appropriately and adequately. And we've had some discussions with Norfolk Southern, some discussions with Amtrak, and at some point, we're not too distant future, we're going to be getting together to try to figure out those costs better, because we got involved in this from the state of Michigan standpoint for the passenger aspects, but also for the freight aspects, and we need to figure out how to best do that, and we're not there yet.
Okay, I think we have one more quick question, and then I'm going to have to cut it so that we can get to the next session.
Yes, hi, Larry Krieg, Michigan Association of Railroad Passengers and Chicago Union Station Passenger Action Task Force. I would like to ask about funding for improvements in Chicago Union Station, because all our trains go there, and it's getting more and more crowded. I know that there are architectural plans ready to go for improvements, and somehow year after year the money gets diverted elsewhere, and I hope that won't last indefinitely, because no matter how fast the trains go, if it's a mess when you get to your destination, you're not going to want to take the train. I just wondered if you know anything about how the money has been diverted, and is there any chance that it would be restored? Thank you.
I'll make. Am I still on? There we go. One, I share your some level of frustration. We're certainly aware that the boarding area in Chicago Union Station is it's easy to say it's beyond capacity. I mean, pardon me? Yeah, and I'm going to call on Ray here in a second, because Ray is the president of the Chicago Union Station group. But it's a great problem to have in one respect, because we've been really successful. Now we've outgrown it. Now coming to the Capitol, you watch this all the time. We're not blessed with. We have not been blessed with an awful lot of capital that hasn't been specifically dedicated to other parts of the railroad. So I'm going to try to make it a high priority, and it is a priority for the company. But we've got to. It's not benign neglect. There's been other priorities. I just give you an example, and I'm going to turn it over to Ray for a quick. We own the Northeast Corridor, and to keep the Northeast Corridor, and I don't want to keep going back to the corridor and thinking that all the money goes out there, but we own the Northeast Corridor, and to keep the Northeast Corridor in the state of good repairs takes an estimated $700 million a year, not to improve, just to keep it safe to run the system we had. So we have to work through this, but we have to do Chicago Union Station also. So thank you for the question. I will pass that question along to the chairman and the CEO. So Ray, did you want to make a quick comment? And I know they're going to kick us out of here.
I would just add, as president of the building, this is a lot of fun to be. We're very well aware that Cusco is beyond capacity, and it's been beyond capacity for 8 or 10 years now. When it was last redone in the 1990s, we were at 2 million passengers a year. Now we're at 4 million Amtrak passengers a year through there. We have a great plan, a fantastic plan to double the size of the Amtrak waiting room, double the size of the Metropolitan Lounge. It does take capital. Sequestration hit the company very, very hard this year. We lost about $100 million in capital, and that project was, as a result, not funded. The board has approved it to the extent we get a good capital appropriation this coming year. It is a high priority for the company. It's one of the highest priorities in the engineering department's budget to double the size of the waiting room and address the serious capacity constraints that we have there.
Okay, thanks, Ray, and thank you, Tom. So we do have a piece of copper for you that you get to take.